Please join us for an hour of Flashback Sports,
where we look back to the sports of the 70s through today and relive the good,
the bad,
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
the ugly,
the really ugly,
the cool,
the Joe Cool,
the characters,
the many, many what were they thinking moments,
and what made the 70s the 70s.
the events,
Down goes Frazier!
the rivalries,
Wanting to go at each other now, huh?
and of course, the fights.
Elston Howard sends it ground to Pee Wee Reese. And these Dodgers at last are world champions. Delirious with joy, teammates and fans mob the Brooklyn pitcher in wild acclaim. In the Dodger clubhouse is the pandemonium only a great victory can generate. And setting the zany pace are Gil Hodges, Duke Snider, and Don Newcomb. This is Brooklyn's greatest baseball day.
Welcome to Flashback Sports with Gil and Dave, and we're going to do something today a little different. We've never talked about the history of the Brooklyn Dodgers, so we're going to shortly bring on Tom Kiley, who's written articles and was a fan who grew up, and he's going to share with us his great memory of being a Brooklyn Dodger fan. But Dave, before we get there, I have a couple housekeeping. I want to say hi to my friend Jimmy. Jimmy, was still thinking about you. I hope you had a good Easter. Hope to be
well, Jimmy.
Yeah, he's doing okay. And then my in-laws are going to celebrate their 60th anniversary, wedding anniversary. Congratulations. So I just want to wish that. And like I said, Dave, we'll talk a little bit later about what's going on with the Yankees and Mets. But I'm looking forward to the Brooklyn Dodgers because I grew up in Brooklyn. My mother was a Dodger fan. My dad was a Yankee fan. And there's so many things I'd like to learn from someone like Tom Kiley, who's written so much. So I guess we could do is wait, before we bring on Tom, let's play number 2 for him because this is one of his boyhood idols.
He's 0 for 1. For the series, he's 7 for 23. Boom! Look out! Look out! You needn't look anymore. There's another one. That's all. Well, the Duke is tearing up the Peapots.
Well, we're going to welcome and bring
Duke of
in
Flatbush.
Yeah, at Bedford Avenue, all the kids used to go look for the balls there. They used to head into the Bedford Avenue there. But if we could bring in Tom Kiley now, and he can talk. Welcome, Tom. Happy Easter, belated Easter, and we're happy that you're sharing time with us.
Hey, Tom.
I put your idol in there. I wanted to make sure. I didn't want to put Mickey Mantle. I know that wouldn't be a good thing, so I put Duke Snider for you. But tell us a little bit. Tell me about your love and how your love of the Dodgers, Brooklyn Dodgers, began. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, Mickey was their Achilles. Duke was our Hector. So,
okay.
But he gave us a shot. And he always came through in the World Series. He was a terrific World Series. He had multiple homers in several World Series, and I think he still holds. He's way up there on now. Of course, they call it postseason games, but in World Series games, he's still way up there on the home run list. Well, as I think Gil knows, I met personally Duke Snider one day when my father, as a result of a box top promotion, I got 2 tickets for a 1957 Brooklyn Dodger game. Excuse me, 1950. Let me just think here. What year?
1954, you told me, right?
1954. And it was very cold, very chilly. My father was very unhappy about having to take me. We lived in Elmont at the time. take me into Ebbets Field because the Giants, the Haiti Giants, had already clinched the pennant for that year. So anyway, we went in, and it's just so happened. I'll try and be brief. I got something in my eye, and we could not get it out of my eye, no matter what we did. So my father brought it to the attention of an usher. He told my father to stay put, and he took me down into the Dodger locker room where there was a first aid station. And one of the assistant trainers came over, and he worked on my eye, and he rolled it around and this and that. And finally, I got rid of it. And I was just sitting there, and who came up behind me but this hulking guy, and he said to me, "What's the matter?" I said, "Well, I have something in my eye." And I thought it was Duke Snyder. And he said to me, "Well, are you okay now?" I said, "I'm fine." He said, "Do you play ball?" I said, "Yeah, I play ball." He said, "Who you play ball for?" And I stupidly said, "The Franklin Bankers." And he said, did they win the pennant? Did you? I said, "No, we didn't win the pennant." He said, "Well, we'll get them next year," which was the Dodger mantra.
Yeah.
So many. So he walked off, and I was one of the happiest 10-year-old kids that ever was. And I told this story to Mike Vaccaro, my friend, the sports writer, and he made it a chief part of one of the articles he wrote about fandom and how kids are influenced by players who take them seriously and are nice to them, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that's my Duke Snyder.
Yeah. Did you had local access to these guys too growing up, right? I mean, they were in the neighborhood. They were
They were neighborhood guys. I can't say
Yeah.
I particularly did, but it was rumored that people saw them in restaurants and
right.
they played. Duke played stickball like Willie Mays. Duke played stickball in the streets of Brooklyn. And he could never hit the ball. He always said, "I could never hit that ball with that stick." And they were real neighborhood people. And they worked in the neighborhood in the off season. Some of them too. So they had to make money, and they did.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll come back later to when they leave, but we get Gil.
Yeah.
That's.
But Tom, you told me that as a boy, and the auras. Talk about a little bit about what it was to go to a game like, say, at Ebbets Field.
It was magical, absolutely magical, especially a night game. The grass was so green, the lights. It was just a magical moment for a 10-year-old kid. And we used to go there early to watch Carl Furillo throw, if you could actually believe that. We would get there. First of all, there was always batting and fielding practice every game. No, not like today where they closed you can't get in, and you never know when they're going to open the park. And we would go there, watch both teams hit. There were only 7 teams other than Brooklyn in the league. Only 154 games, 22 against each team. So you knew the other teams very well. Furillo would throw from the outfield. We were fascinated by his arm. He had, at a certain point, he was the best right fielder in the league until guys like K-Line and Hank Aaron, Frank Robinson, people like that showed up and kind of surpassed him. But up to a certain point, he was the greatest.
Yeah, Furillo's a very underrated player. You always think of the Hall of Famers, Campanella, Schneider, Pee Wee, Jackie Robinson, but Furillo was I don't want to say he's a borderline Hall of Famer, but a 300 hitter, some pop in his bat, and like you said, a great right fielder, and big core in the background. You got to mention Clemente. I was gonna throw you Clemente. One of our followers was Clemente. Yeah. Is a big Clemente fan, so
there was nobody like Clemente. Absolutely, Furillo.
Yeah. Furillo was a very underrated ball player.
Furillo once won the batting title, hit 344. One of the crimes, baseball crimes, is he hit so poorly his very last year or two that his lifetime was only 299. I always thought that was a little sad because he was a 300 hitter. He hit 300 many times, and he's also kind of got lost in the shuffle with all of the other Hall of Famers. He was the master of the right field wall, which was that's a whole story in itself. How to play the right field wall in Ebbets Field, because there were about 6, 7, 8 different. There was cement, there was screens, there was a scoreboard, and he would catch the ball off the wall and throw people out at third or home. He was unbelievable, and it was very exciting to watch do his thing out there.
Tom, you were talking about, we talk about the Subway Series with the Yankees, but talk about a little bit of the rivalry with the New York Giants, because it was something that was unheard of. You know, we don't see that anyway today, a rivalry like that. Talk a little bit about us being a Dodger fan and dealing with the Giant fans and Yankee fans growing up in Brooklyn.
Well, you know, as I said, we played the Giants 22 times a year. So there were a lot of bad blood, a lot of beanball stuff going on. I don't think most people, or maybe all of them, didn't wear helmets back then. Leo DeRocha was a Dodger manager who became the Giants manager and became the most hated guy in Brooklyn. And he was a really rough and tough type guy. Required beanballs from Sal Magli against the Dodgers. So it was very, very, very kind of a hate-inducing kind of experience, very, very interesting. And, they were great. They had a great team, and they won in 51 and they won in 54. They won the World Series in 54, 4 straight against the fabulous Cleveland team. And they lost to the Yankees in the World Series in 51. They're a wonderful team.
What was that feeling like? Because the Dodgers have this great run. Dodgers are a great team really throughout the 40s and the 50s. But can't beat the Yankees. They lose to the Yankees. Yankees who have a stretch of, they win 5 in a row from 49 to 53. They beat the Dodgers, I think, 3 times out of those 5 years. They also beat them in 41 and 47, I think. So you're losing them every year. You can't win the World Series. Were you sick when the Giants win the World Series in 54 and beat a great Cleveland team? Or are you rooting for National League at that point?
No, definitely not rooting for the National League. Anybody but the Giants. That's
right. Okay, yeah.
And Cleveland had a wonderful, wonderful team with 4 Hall of Fame
pitchers.
Narleski and Morsi in relief. They had Garcia, Early Wynn, Bob Fella, Bob Lemon. I mean, they had a tremendous pitching staff. Yeah.
You know, Tom, we're going to show you a video, and then you're going to explain to me how great this play was. So play number 10, Jack, and Tom is going to explain to me how great this baseball play was.
There goes the drive down the left field line, and Sandy Amorous races for the ball, sticks out his glove just in time, and makes the catch. And McDougal has rounded second base. He throws to Reese. And Reese's peg to Hodges doubles McDougal at first. Let's have another look at that spectacular play.
In the clutch, that was him. And he did that to the Dodgers all the time. But that Reese's play is a little known play, really, but it's a fabulous eyes in the back of the head type play. One thing you might be interested in is Amorous had come in that very inning. Robinson was hurt that day. He did not play. The Dodgers lineup included Don Hoke at third and Don Zimmer at second. They were not even really the boys of summer. And Gilliam was put into left field to start the game. And he was by trade a second baseman. And in that 6th inning, I think it was, Alston replaced Gilliam, who was a right-handed thrower with the glove on his left hand, with Amorous, who was a speed demon with the glove on his right hand. And that is the only reason that play could have been made.
And
people forget Zimmer was he's a ball player. He played with the Giants. Actually had a decent career for himself, Don Zimmer. So forgot about that.
But he was just kind of a part-time guy. And that really, even in 55, the Dodgers were aging by 55. Their heyday was the 50, 51, 52, 53, those years. By 55, things started creeping. And Robinson only played, his last year was 56. And, of course, the Dodgers left for L.A. in 57.
So we're going to show you a controversial play. We've had people on the show that say one way, but the play number 7, Jack, and see what Tom says about this play.
With pinch batter Frank Keller at bat. Robinson dashes for the plate. It's close, and umpire Summers calls him safe on the daring maneuver. But Yogi Berra doesn't think so. And the fans will never forget the sight of Jackie Robinson tearing for the plate on his daring steal.
So out of safe, Tom.
9 times out of 10, the ump calls you out on that play.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
You're
right. Wow.
It was. I think they had broken that thing down to the millisecond, and that's how close that play is. And the ump, the ump is guessing because he can't possibly see whether he's out, but it's
behind Barrow looking over the top. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Tom, talk to me like after that play, like when you won it, beat the Yankees in '55. What was the feeling? How was Brooklyn? And did Brooklyn just go crazy? I mean, how was the
Brooklyn went crazy? Brooklyn went crazy. Parades, they're just we were no longer bums. When that was a big headline in one of the papers, Daily News, I think it was. It says, "Who's a bum?" And the big cartoon picture of the Brooklyn Dodger bum was on there. Who's a bum? That was it. Right. That was our one shot. Who knew that 2 years later they were going to be gone? Nobody knew that.
Yeah.
I told Gil this old joke, and then when they left, the old joke was, if you're in a room with Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, and Walter O'Malley, and you only have 2 bullets, who do you shoot? And the answer is, you shoot O'Malley twice.
That's great.
I love that.
It's
oh my God.
Right.
Yeah.
That actually answered my next question, which is, can you look how upset we get? We get upset when when Juan Soto leaves our team, or Kristaps Porzingis wants to be traded, or can you imagine, if the Yankees or the Mets or our team just basically saying, okay, we're going to go play 3,000 miles away because it makes economic sense, or we're going to basically move west. We're going to move baseball west. I mean, I can't imagine what that experience was like, especially when that's such a big part of everybody's life. It's part of your culture, part of your neighborhood, community, just basically up and gone. And then, I mean, just from New York's perspective, like that's months later. It's like the Giants as well. I think even more so out of nowhere. So can you imagine you're losing the heart and soul of your city within a matter of months?
That was the charm of O'Malley. He somehow convinced Horace Stoneham to go out and take that windblown ballpark out in San Francisco, so they would have a rival. He got the Chavez Ravine $1 billion property. Yeah. He was a real estate lawyer. He knew real estate, and and nobody ever thought. My father never steered me wrong, and he told me, "Don't worry, it'll never happen, Tom. It can't happen." So it was a tremendous shock.
Yeah.
And Tom, how that happened like so quickly? You in the pennant, you won 56, 57, and how did it feel like in a year or two later they won another World Series? That must have been very bittersweet, right?
Very strange, because all the years we worked to win one, and then they won. Somebody said something, and it's true. The problem with the Brooklyn Dodgers was pitching. They had they had one of the finest aggregates ever put together, but the pitching wasn't on that level. And when they got out to LA, all of a sudden they had Drysdale and Koufax. And, they made 1 run and 2 runs stick, whereas that could never be in Brooklyn.
Tom, do you think that was the difference between why the Yankees won more series against the Dodgers? You think it was basically the pitching?
Absolutely. Guys like Allie Reynolds, Whitey Ford. I'm trying to think of a couple of the other guys. They were, and also a lot of pieces. The complementary pieces gave the Dodger hitters a lot of trouble. I can remember Bob Kuzava, who was a journeyman guy, coming against a left-handed pitcher against Snyder, and would give him a heck of a time in the clutch. And Hodges always had a lot of trouble with the right-hand slants of a guy like Allie Reynolds.
Wow. And wasn't my dad like Vic Rash? He said was a good.
Vic Rash
is good. Yeah, Dodgers pitching in those years. They had Newcomb, they had Clem Labine, they had
Erskine, right?
Erskine. All had some nice years. All of them you would probably category as maybe average to above average pitchers. No studs. No, I think Newcomb won a Cy Young. Other than that, they were pretty much, middle of the road, number 3 starters. The Yankees usually had it.
Rowe was a very crafty guy.
Yeah.
Like you said, Labine was very good. But Joe Black was very good reliever for them. But they were very good. I mean, they won, pennant after pennant after pennant. They were not anything to sneeze at. But head to head,
that the lineup was. The lineup was, you had a Hall of Fame infield, and then you have Duke Schneider in center, and then Ferrello in right, and
Tom, we
Hall of
have
Famers around the infield. So that'll work most of the time.
We got a video number 3. I know it's one of your nemesis, but you mentioned Bob, that left-handed pitcher. So Jack, play number 3. I know Tom will mention a lot about who caught this ball. Number 3.
3 runners ready to lead away. It's a high pop-up. Who's going to get it? Here comes Billy Martin digging hard, and he makes the catch at the last second. How about that? There was a ball that the wind held up. And even though it was just a high pop-up, Billy Martin still had to lunge for the ball. Man, it's been a great series. It still is.
What you think about that play, Tom?
Well,
I know you said you didn't like
Billy Martin. That was Billy Martin to a T. In the World Series, he was murder. He had a walk-off hit, I remember, in one World Series. Nobody was going to catch that ball but Billy Martin, and that's the kind of he was, And I think that was maybe 53, something like that. That he played much bigger than he really was, much better than he was, especially in the. And he did not like the Dodgers. He hated Roy Campanella. They had a problem on a collision play from years before. And, he was really, he was a tough guy, Billy Martin, very tough. Yeah.
So you guys also had, which, one of the great mysteries probably, I guess it was all about control, because you did have Koufax, of course, going back probably, I think he was on the 55, 56 teams, but he obviously was not Koufax then. He was just a guy with control problems. It took a long time.
It was what was called a bonus baby back then. A bonus baby by rule had to be on the varsity roster. He virtually didn't play in 55 at all. And his control was horrible back then. It took a few years for him to get it all together. In fact, Tommy Lasorda, I think, was cut in order to make room for.
Lasorda tells that story. Yeah, I remember him saying that.
I once saw an interview of Lasorda, and I always laughed because he was an old Brooklyn Dodger. He had lived in Brooklyn. They asked him where he lived in Brooklyn. He couldn't remember. So I thought that was. Everybody remembers where they live in Brooklyn, but he could not remember where. He was quite an advanced age at that time, but he couldn't remember anymore. Was Benson hurt? What was it?
Right. Tom, I always talk to old Brooklyn Dodger fans. They talk about the symphony and all the great fans and, their love of Gil Hodges. Talk a lot. I mean, I know I think he lived in Bedford Avenue, Gil Hodges. You have any stories about Gil Hodges or any of those like Dodger Symphony Band or the great, the characters that were Dodger fans?
Well, I would say this about Gil Hodges, because he was Mr. Comportment. He was a gentleman. We wanted him actually to get into more rough and tumble than he actually ever got into. But the one story I remember about him is my father told me very early on in my life, Tom, if you want to be an athlete, you can never smoke. Never smoke. So one day we were at Ebbets Field, and we used to wait for the Dodgers to come out. They used to come out for some reason through the press exit. And Gil Hodges came out, and he's got 2 cartons of Lucky Strikes in one hand, and he's got 2 cartons of Lucky Strikes in the other hand. Normal people could not hold 2 cartons of Lucky Strike in one hand, much less in either hand. So I looked at my father. My father looked at me, anticipating my question. He said to me, "Don't worry, son. They're not for him. They're for his family." So he sent my 10-year-old head, okay, now everything's right with the world. But of course, Gil smoked a lot of those unfiltered Chesterfields. And, he was a heart attack in 72, I think it was. That finished him. Yeah.
And Tom, what about the Campanella and Barrett? Talk a little bit about that. I mean, how great was Campanella?
Oh, my God. Campanella may still have the highest percentage of throw out of steal rate in the history of the major leagues. He's like somewhere around 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, today, if they throw out 25%, they give him a medal. 50%. He was a 3-time MVP, 51, I think 53 and 55. Berra also was a 2 or 3-time MVP. I mean, the two of them were in the same town. Ridiculous, you know, how good they were. Just ridiculous. Campanella was a first-string catcher in the old Negro leagues when he was 14. He didn't come up till he was like 27. He had caught probably, 1,000 games by the time he finally got up into the major leagues after Robinson, right? Shortly after Robinson, he came in, you know. Fabulous player. It's
interesting that up the middle, right? You had the Campanella Yogi, you had Pee Wee and Rizzuto, and you had Schneider and Mantle as kind of like all contemporaries, all just, you know, Hall of Famers, and kind of comparable players too, you know, in terms of like, you know, what they did.
Schneider at his best was a comparable player. In the long run, of course, no. But Schneider, like for 4 or 5 years, hit 40, 45 homers. He knocked in 130 runs. His problem in center field was that Ebbets Field was small. He couldn't really, he didn't have the ability to go and get him the way Mantle did in the big center field or Mays did in the big polo ground. But they were pretty comparable for maybe 5-6 years until clearly Mantle, and then even beyond that, Mays showed their you know,
no doubt. So when they leave, do you become, you know, well, Mets 1962? Do you become a Met fan? What happens in 57?
I did become a Met fan, although they were kind of hard to root for in 1962. But I remember going to the Polo Grounds because the Dodgers were coming in. I think Wills was their shortstop then. Things that had changed. There was still a few of the old. I think Hodges might have hung around a little bit. Maybe even Snyder for a while, although maybe he was with the Mets in '62. But anyway, but I did become a Mets fan, although I never really have ever become a Mets fan the way I was a Brooklyn Dodger fan, because I was a a young man then. I was not 10 years old anymore. You know.
So Tom, if you had to say, I know you had that funny joke about O'Malley, but what did they? I mean, who was really at fault? Would you say it was O'Malley? Was it the Mayor Wagner? Was it Robin Moses? Tell me, why do you think? I mean, was it just that he got a great deal in California? What do you think? The biggest reason why the Dodgers left?
Well, it was because Robert Moses, who was one of the few guys in New York who didn't care a fig about baseball. He had been a manager of the Yale swimming team. He couldn't care less about baseball. And he just wouldn't budge on condemning certain area in Brooklyn that O'Malley wanted condemned in order to raise a new ballpark there. But, you know, in retrospect, I say to myself, you know, everybody was leaving Brooklyn in '57 anyway. I mean, we were coming out to Long Island as well, hundreds, thousands of others. So I don't know whether Brooklyn had a viable future, at least in that maybe 20-year period. And so it doesn't seem as far-fetched to me now as it did then that they would go to Flushing, which is what O'Malley offered them, to go to Flushing, where the Mets are. It turned out quite a viable thing for the Mets. O'Malley said, and everybody kind of agreed, we are not the Flushing Dodgers, you know, we are the Brooklyn Dodgers, you know. But he got that offer from a councilwoman out west, and as I said, he was a real estate guy. He had bumped Branch Rickey off of the Dodger ownership board, and he was like the controlling agent now, and he knew real estate, and she made him an offer he couldn't refuse. You know, it was a shot.
Well, it kind of worked out for them, you know. So can't really.
Yeah.
It's been pretty good for them.
Tom, when they left Brooklyn, I know people, you know, couldn't stand it. Did people continue to follow them, or very few people followed the Dodgers after that? Was it such a hatred?
Yeah. Some people, you know, were so hurt they didn't. Some people did. I can remember Les Kaida used to do a recreation off ticket tape. People that really were, you know, still into the Dodgers and the Giants, they would listen to this. He would make it up as he went along. The ticket tape would say foul ball caught by Hodges, and he would go, Hodges goes over to the thing. He reaches in, he gets the, third row. Yeah, it was all, you know, made up off the ticket tape. But people And they did show up in the Polo Grounds when the Dodgers and Giants came back to play the Mets. Yeah.
And Tom, we never talked about a little bit about you. We heard a couple of those videos with Red Barber, Mel Allen. Talk about listening to the game on the radio, like when I grew up in Brooklyn, and what. Tell about the difference in having those great announcers. How was that?
Well, Red Barber was finally eclipsed by Vince Scully, but Red Barber was the greatest wordsmith of my youth. Tearing up the pea patch, which I just heard him say, and one of the promos you guys showed, in the catbird seat. If a guy was hitting, 3-0 with the bases loaded, he was in the catbirds. He was a real Southern gentleman, and he was a real wordsmith. And I was there. It's kind of interesting. I was there in the transition from radio to TV. In my early days, we never had a radio. I don't know why we didn't have one, but we didn't have one. But every radio in the street in a car had the Dodgers on, or the people had it up in their apartment. You would know who's winning. The Dodgers are winning 4-3. Okay, then you play stickball or something, and then you'd find out. You stuck with them through the radio, and then as I got a little older, TV started, and I always remember when the Dodgers televised 100 of 154 games. That was unbelievable to me that we were going to see 100 games. Today, right. They televise everything, Right. But so I was kind of right. As a younger person, I was a radio guy, and then eventually, I remember seeing on TV. Bobby Thompson's Homer. And I remember even in 1950, something you guys might not know, but on the last game of the season, the Dodgers lost the pennant to the Philadelphia Phillies. And Cal Abrams was thrown out at the plate by Richie Ashburn with nobody out. Snyder hit a ball up the middle. And instead of going ahead in the ninth inning, they threw Abrams out. He was a hated guy. Funny little anecdote is one years later, I'm walking down Nassau Boulevard in Garden City, and I walk into the old Blossom Lounge. And who's the owner but Cal Abrams? He's sitting there. I'm probably the only guy in the world who recognized Cal Abrams from getting thrown out at the plate in 1950. And he looked like the weight of that being thrown out. That was the most famous thing he ever did in baseball, is get thrown out. He was just sitting there. He didn't want to talk to me. I thought I'd go up to him. Hey, Cal, I remember. No, I don't want to talk about it. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it? A sac fly? What was it? A base hit that he got thrown out?
It was. Abrams was on second with nobody out. Snyder hit a ball up the middle. The backstory is supposedly the catcher gave a pitch out, a pickoff to the pitcher. The pitcher missed the pickoff sign. Ashburn saw it from center field and was creeping in. So when Snyder hit the ball up the middle, Ashburn, who couldn't throw anybody out from anywhere, he had a very weak arm, was already right behind second base. Wow. So the third base coach of the Dodgers, who was fired after that play, they didn't return next year, waved Abrams around. It would have been first and third and nobody out. And he ran into an out by 3 yards. It was a very famous play, a very famous picture.
That was at bottom of the ninth inning. You said it was bottom of the ninth inning.
That was in the ninth inning, and then in the 10th inning, Dick Sisler hit a homer for Philly. And by the way, talking about TV, that game I saw with my father because we didn't have a TV then, and he took me down to a TV appliance place where everybody was watching the game in the window of the appliance store, which is what people did who didn't have a TV. Yeah. And there were 20 people around the thing when Dick Sisler hit his homer in the 10th to beat the Dodgers. That was the tragedy that I was born into with the Dodgers. They lost on they lost on the last game of the season in 50, and then they lost in the playoffs in 51. And that was the Brooklyn Dodgers I knew.
Never heard that story. 1950. I didn't realize back-to-back brutal endings. So
well, the 51 ending is even more interesting. The backstory on that is Newcomb is pitching a great game, but he's out of gas, right? So they go get the manager. I guess it was Charlie Dressen. Then says, okay, who you got down in the bullpen? And the bullpen coach says, I got Erskine and I got Branca. And he says, well, who's doing what down there? And the bullpen coach said, well, Erskine just bounced the curveball. So the guy said, okay, then give me Branca. And Ralph Branca comes in and throws the home run ball to Bobby Thompson. Yeah. That's
I worked with an old Brooklyn Dodger fan many years ago at State Farm, and he hated Charlie Dressen. He, like you hated O'Malley, wanted to give him a couple bullets, but he said Branca had given a home run to him before, like he was a dope. He said that Bobby Thompson hit a home run against Branca in, I think, game 1. He said, why did he bring him in? He said he always hit Branca pretty well. Like, I guess who knows about Statson or
you got the answer. Erskine bounced the curveball. Wow. So he didn't want, it was second and third. He didn't want Erskine. He wanted Branca. And number 13 came in and gave it up. Yeah.
Tom, before we let you go, you told us a really sad story about Carl Erskine when they were there with the Ebbets Field being demolished. Talk a little bit about that story.
Well, that's a great story, a sad story. So, the Ebbets Field stood until about 1960, actually, right? And then they decided they were going to take it down. But it came to pass that on the appointed day, they had all kind of old Dodger luminaries, a bunch of old Dodger ball players, and they all were in the field having drinking the cocktails and having fun, and seeming to be everything was okay. And all of a sudden, a big crane raised up a big lead ball that was painted like a baseball. And all of a sudden, in the midst of all this, good times, it dropped the lead ball on top of the visitors' dugout and crushed it. And Erskine, who was there, he said, what the hell am I doing here? Let me get out of here. And all of a sudden, what seemed like it was a good idea for him to be there turned into a very sad moment for me. He couldn't even realize why am I there? What am I doing this at the demise of Ebbets Field on the day they're going to wreck it right in front of my eyes,
Right.
And Tom, one last question. We never saw Jackie Robinson, but tell us about something like a story, or tell me, something about Jackie Robinson, like I said, because we never saw him play.
To me, there's never been anybody like him. He was so exciting. He was exciting when he stole. He was exciting when he faked stealing. He was exciting when he came down the third base line but didn't steal. I remember once in a World Series, he rounded second against Elson Howard was in left. He stood right in the middle of the baseline, and as soon as Elson Howard threw behind him, he ran to third. He was always a step ahead of everybody. He knew just what he could do and what he dared to do and what he could make work. He was a very exciting player, running the bases. And of course, we really in Brooklyn gave ourselves a pat on the back, probably for not much of a reason. But, my father always said, we're the guys who took in the first African-American player. We did that. And that happened in Ebbets Field. That didn't happen in Yankee Stadium.
Right.
Yankee Stadiums were a lot slower on that subject, So
yeah, about 5 or 6 years slower, actually.
Yeah,
between Elson Howard.
Slow.
Yeah. It's a shame because they lost all these guys. Actually, you mentioned Campanella, Jackie, even Nelson Howard. They lost some prime years. Because I think Campanella and Jackie Roberts were both about 27, 28-ish when they came up. Same thing with Howard. So they both got what they could have done. With a few more years.
Tom, before we let you go, we're not going to show you all the good Brooklyn Dodgers stuff. We're going to throw if you could throw number 5 and 6, because we're Yankee fans and we're going to make sure you know that too. So, and I'm doing this for your wife, Tom. So
Larson is ready, gets the sign. 2 strikes, ball 1. Here comes the pitch. Strike 3. A no-hitter, a perfect game for Don Larson. Yogi Berra runs out there. He leaps on Larson, and he's swarmed by his teammates. Listen to this crowd roar. The first World Series no-hitter, a perfect performance by Don Larson.
The count is 2 strikes when Yogi Berra slams one down the right field line. His second homer of the series sends the Yankees out in front 2-0. but Yogi connects, and it's another homer over the right center wall. It's 10 runs batted in for Yogi, an all-time World Series record. The Yankees go ahead 4-0.
It wasn't all going to be all good, Brooklyn Dodgers. We got a very good connection with your wife, Barbara, who to this day my kids loved as a teacher. And then when the Yankees will win playoff games and World Series, no homework. So we may have to throw that in there. Tom, before you leave, tell the audience about who's in front of you and who's behind you in your room.
In front of me is Mickey Mantle. His eyes never leave me 24. No matter where I go in the room, his eyes seem to follow me. But behind me is leaping Duke Snyder, a guy when he came up, they said this kid has springs in his legs. And this guy could jump 13 feet in the air in the days when that was a prodigious leap. Against the bull of a sign, the picture behind me says. And also Carl Frillo's behind me, too. So I got at least 2 for 1.
Good stuff.
Well,
Good
Tom,
stuff.
it's been a pleasure. And then, if you ever want to come on again and talk more about the Dodgers or anything else, I mean, we only scratched the surface, but I can't tell you how great it was that you came on our show and spread out. We don't know these things. We hear these things. It's hindsight, but you're like speaking the gospel of the Dodgers. So, I mean, you were there, and I appreciate you. We appreciate your time with us.
Well,
Great
thank
stuff.
you very much. I have to say I got through about 1/3 of my notes. So if you want me
back, then we got another show down the road.
We got 2 more shows to go. Have a good night, Tom. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the time.
Wow, that was stuff
Good
I never
stuff,
knew
yeah.
anything
Just
about.
some memory, my God.
He's got a photographic memory, and he like a baseball steering. I didn't know that story about 1950 with the guy Carl Abrams being. I didn't know.
Richie Ashburn. Yeah, no, never. Can you imagine that back-to-back years? You get thrown out at home plate with nobody out, and then next year you got Bobby Thompson taking Branca deep.
The last game,
walking her off.
the last game in the season. That's heartbreaking. I know. But he's a nice man. He's written a lot of publications and stuff like that. But really happy that we had him on there. Now, Dave, was going to your wheelhouse. What's going on with the Knicks, the Yankees, Mets? Tell us what's the Knicks' secret to win this next series? And is there anybody in the back that wants to come and join us? But tell us what.
Well, we got big core back there. He can get his. We got the guy that one thing Tom didn't mention Clemente Kleberg. So I know he got them all fired up. So I had your back though, Core. I was going for Clemente, so I had your back.
Manny Sanguine. When he doesn't talk about Manny Sanguine, I pretend he's not there.
Yeah, exactly. So welcome.
How are you, big Core?
Never better. That was very interesting. It brought back some memories. I mean, Tom's a little older than I. But I actually saw the Brooklyn Dodgers play with my dad and my younger brother in Forbes Field. And I can remember Carl Furillo throwing out a very young Bill Mazeroski trying to go from first to third on a hit by Roberto Clemente. And Furillo gunned him out at third base. And we were just sitting there, my brother and I and my dad, and my dad being Italian, he said, "That's Furillo, the guy's name. You should have never ran on him."
I love that. Great
this is the first time we had we had an Italian talked about an Italian ball player that Gil didn't say should be in the Hall of Fame. So that's how maybe because he's a Dodger. I don't know.
He's still a Dodger. I'm sorry, Brooklyn, LA. I don't like LA, so I know he was at Brooklyn, Furillo, but he wasn't a Yankee and he wasn't. That's true. It's the first time I didn't say anything good about that. But Big Core, I knew that was your wheelhouse. That's stuff that we didn't know. Me and Dave learned a lot about the Dodgers about that. And I know we got some other people in the back. So, Jack, whoever's in the back, let them come up. And then,
bring them all on. I see.
Bring them all on and see what they have.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Jimmy!
Jimmy!
Thanks.
Jimmy,
doing,
good to see you. Jimmy, talk first. Tell me how you feeling.
I'm feeling really good. Thank God.
Oh.
Everything I appreciate. Keep me going.
Okay. You already look better than us, so that's
one day at a time.
All right,
good.
Jimmy.
It's fantastic.
Happy Easter to you. Everything is good?
Everything good.
You like to talk about the Brooklyn Dodgers?
I didn't know much about them. I wasn't around, but I heard stories. My uncle.
You're breaking up a little bit, Jim.
You're breaking up a little bit, Jimmy.
I don't know.
That's a little better. There's something in the background. I don't know if it's TV or what.
Know what it could be.
Okay. Yeah, finish your thought, Jimmy.
So
Nope, still losing you.
all right.
Yeah.
You must have Gil's headset. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Jimmy. Stay on with us, Jimmy. Gigi, how are you?
All right, all good.
How's everything? Good?
All good. I got no complaints.
Yeah, Mets are in first place or right there. So
all good news tonight. Who the hell knew the Dodgers were in Brooklyn? Never even heard of that.
When did that happen?
I don't know. Your boys lost tonight to the Guardians again. How'd that happen?
They're dead to me.
They're dead to me. We're in first place.
Yeah, first place.
No, they have. I actually like this kid, Will Warren. He's got a good arm. He just wilts in big spots. He
played well he pitched well for like 4 or 5 innings.
Yeah, he does that, and then he just kind of in big spots. Right before we came on, I took him out in the 6th. Got a couple guys on panic mode, but anyway. But
I got to tell you something. Gigi, it was great to see, but I haven't seen Jimmy hasn't been on the show for months. I'm happy he was able to come back.
Yeah, look good.
So Gigi, what do you got there? You got. Let's see what's behind it. What do you got? That's you. Oh my God!
I got my cocktails for the evening.
Where's this, Dave? Is it by you? You ready? You over what? So what? You excited about the Mets? What are your expectations?
How could you not be? I mean, look, it's what could be better right now? Pitching, we're hitting, we're doing it all. So I'm loving it while it lasts. But who knows for how long it's going to last?
Well, now that you said that, probably another inning because they'll probably put the Wolfie on them right tonight. So
probably put the
exactly.
Put the horns on them. But no, we're listen. I love it. We got the Soto effect going on, and it's all good.
And the people I read
I didn't expect them to get so.
Yeah, they said the attendance is up a lot. I was reading about Soto. The attendance is up. People, there's more. I mean, listen, I walk around Babylon. Unfortunately, I see a lot more Met hats than I have done. I've been there 25 years. I hardly, when I walk around Park, I never see that. I mean, it gets me a little pissed off. I have to admit that all these Met hats, but it's just that I have a photo, just something like that. But I do see a lot more than I did in a long time. And Dave, what's going on with the Knicks? Tell us what they have to do to win.
Got to pass the ball. How about that? We'll start with that. You're allowed to pass it. They don't do it. I was at game 1, and they were lucky to win that game. They just the defense was terrible. They couldn't guard the 3, which is a little pet peeve of mine with Tibbs. His inability to defend the 3. Then if you watch last night's, game, Detroit just out-hustled them, outworked them, out-coached them, in my mind, because they're doubling, as almost everybody does, Brunson out by center court. The Knicks have not figured out a way to take some of the pressure off Brunson. Brunson winds up dribbling way too much, in my opinion. They're 10, 15 seconds into the shot clock before they're even in position to score, because all they're trying to do is double through. There was no ball movement whatsoever. The offense was ugly. The only way they're scoring right now in the series is off of turnovers, which is, you need to get them. That's part of the Knicks game. But if they don't get turnovers, they don't create a little chaos on defense, they're not going to score. Unless Brunson just happens, you can't rely on somebody scoring 40 a game, especially a guy who's being double teamed. And then it keeps everybody else stagnant. And one last thing is Towns has to exert his will against, especially when he's being guarded by Tobias Harris, a smaller guy. He's just got to go down and plant themselves, and Nick's got to find a way to get the ball into him, because it's just becoming the offense is just, it's ugly to watch, and they're too talented offensively to be this ugly. So so I'm not.
Hey, Remo, keep off your mute.
Oh, Remo, is that your friend, Dave? Is that a relative?
He's a friend of mine.
Oh, he hasn't figured out the picture or the audio. Other than that, he's set. He didn't click the link, Remo.
He's doing the sign language for the people that are hard of hearing.
Exactly. Jimmy, do we have you back? Are you back in action here? Or are you on?
Hey, Jimmy, are you upset Sam Rosen's retiring? I'm a big. I like him, but I like Gordon and Chadwick better. But what do you think about Sam Rosen's career?
I'm kind of both ways. I'm sorry to see he goes.
but it opens the opportunity for somebody else. He called the biggest game in Rangers that I know of, that I've been alive for. And, it's just very unsettling in a way that 40 years have gone by. I remember when he started. That's scary. When he started, crazy. I tell you one thing, though, he's a very personable guy. We met him outside the Garden one night going in, me and my son. And I told my son who he was. He went over there and asked him for the autograph. He said, wait, you got a camera? Take a picture. He was really, really nice. I can't say enough about him.
I heard he's I've heard people even in going to opposing arenas and stuff. He'll stop and take pictures with everybody. He's a very personable guy. So, hey, listen, I thought he was a great announcer. I'm also the fact that he's getting out where he's slipping a little bit, but still maybe not the top of his game, but still very good.
And that still sounds great. I mean, his voice hasn't changed, but he kind of seems to look like 40 years ago, for better or worse. That is, but he kind of looks the same. And he's
in 40 years. How many games has he missed?
Yeah, right. And just think about how fortunate we are. We were talking about this the other day with my kids, I think, and we were whatever our situation is, whatever the Knicks, Rangers, Mets, Yankees, football team, we have the best announcers. If you listen to other announcers, between the Knicks have the two greatest basketball announcers of all time, not even close, with Mike Breen and Marv Albert. Not to mention Walt Clyde Frazier, John Andres, when they were the color guys for Marv and Breen. You got Bill Chadwick, and Sam and Jim Gordon before Sam Rosen. You have all these, and then you had obviously Marv was doing radio for you have all these these teams. We have the best announcers. Even when our teams are terrible, they're a great listen.
You know who was good, Dave?
Very lucky that way.
In the NBA, when Marv used to do the radio with John Andres.
I loved John Andres. I mean, he was
like a great announcer. I really liked him I
loved him. They were just great. They were funny. One thing about Marv, it's a flip of a coin. Who do you like better? Breen, to me anyway. Breen and Marv were the two best. Marv had a sense of humor. He was very sarcastic.
Yeah.
He would let you know. He called. He invented garbage time.
I know he was good. Like I always liked Marv on the radio better than TV. I don't know, maybe because I started learning sports with him being on the radio. And even though he used to do Ranger games with Red Light Messina, who was another guy who was there for a long time, I always thought Marv was not much better, but better at basketball. I just thought he was just. I always think he always had the. When he said yes and it counts, all that stuff was like, and he always gave you a picture of what was going on, on the court, even with the hockey, right, Jimmy? Marv was very good at depicting. He'd tell them to shoot at the 8th Avenue side, the Knicks are shooting. You went there, you're like, in your head, you're saying, he's trying to tell you what's going on and all that stuff. It was like, he tried to paint the picture as a kid. And like, we didn't have cable, we didn't have cable till like 1980 or 81. So I used to watch Ranger playoff games going to my father's firehouse.
Oh, really?
Manhattan. They had Manhattan cable, yeah. So we had a bunch of friends that go there and watch the games, and stuff like that. But we didn't have cable in Brooklyn for a long time, And we learned on the radio. I would sometimes have memories of listening to Nick Celtics, Nick's Bullets, the Lakers game, and and then they would have the games on Channel 7 with. Was it Chris Schenkel? Remember, he used to be on.
Chris Schenkel was everywhere. Exactly.
I used to like the Nick radio. They used to, on TV. They used to have Bob Wolf and Cal Ramsey, which is a really good announcing crew. So I mean, we've been fortunate in New York having a lot of great announcers that have been there so long. What do you think about Dave Sims, Dave?
I literally actually only heard him for because he's been around forever, Dave Sims, and he's been out on the West Coast for a while. So he's always like a very likable guy.
The greatest franchise in sports history. You got to get announcers that you got to get them in the booth before they're embalmed. The Yankees announcers are just they're just not up to par with the franchise. I'm sorry. For 40 years, they got these guys that are.
For who? Yankees?
And the only thing the Mets have had on the Yankees in their history is announcers. The Mets have always had a great booth.
Mets have always had a great booth. Listen, we're going to debate that. That could be a whole other conversation.
Lindsey Nelson, what's his name? Lindsey Nelson and Ralph Kiner.
All very good. The guys are good right now, but there was no Rizzuto. There was only one Phil Rizzuto.
Yeah, he was good for 7 innings.
I tell you what,
He was good for 7 innings.
Yeah, no.
Who
Where's Big Core? Who do you got down in Pittsburgh? We're giving Pittsburgh no.
I
love.
don't know because they all go to the games in Pittsburgh with paper bags on their heads.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
They don't even have television or radio in Pittsburgh.
no, they don't, man. They just do sign language.
Hey, Big Core, I'm going to Pittsburgh to see the Mets play in June. You got to tell me where I gotta go.
Well, definitely you have to take that what they call the Duquesne Incline, and that'll take you right up. Take that. Go to Station Square. It's right there. You can take a ferry boat. It'll take you right across from Station Square, take you right to the ballpark. It is fantastic. It's a great ride. It's a great ride. You get a little sense of seeing how Pittsburgh kind of all came together. If you can kind of visualize nothing there with these two rivers, and all of a sudden up springs all this construction and everything else, and it's just that's where the West started, go way back in the 1700s. That's exactly right. Big point I'd like to make. I mean, I'm not going to take exception with Tom talking about Robinson. I never saw him play because, frankly, when I was a kid going to see the Brooklyn Dodgers play the Pirates, and the Pirates stunk in the 50s, and then the Giants. Junior Gilliam was playing second base, and they pretty much Robinson was pretty much kind of out. But I have to tell you, when the Giants came to town, the New York Giants, or in San Francisco, everybody wanted to see Mays. Everybody, and he's the greatest ball player I've ever seen in my life. I mean, with all due respect to Clemente, and he's the greatest Pirate. But Mays, we just would watch him, and he would just do things that were so different than other ball players. 1 minute he'd hit a line drive between would just barely get over the shortstop's head, and he would just scream to the left field wall, and he'd be digging for second. And if the outfielder wasn't quick to the ball, he was at third base. And the next minute they're backing up, and he'd lay down a bunt, and he'd beat the third baseman's throw, and he'd steal second base. And of course, in the outfield, you just couldn't get a ball past him. I mean, he was just his arm.
Hey, alone,
I know. Big Core, I wish we could talk longer, but producer's saying we're out of time. Hey, guys, hope you all had a good Easter. We appreciate every time you come on the show. Jimmy was real surprised to see you. You made the show, Jimmy. GG.
Hopefully see you soon in person.
And I appreciate everybody's support. Play let's end the show with Sam Rosen tribute, number 9 for Sam, 40 years with the Rangers.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Rosen. Phil Esposito. Welcome to New York Rangers hockey. I'm Sam Rosen.
Welcome to New York Rangers hockey. Sam Rosen.
And we are underway. The Rangers opening up. Yager moves to the net. Yager scores! Shot save, rebound score! Alexei Kovalov! He shoots, he scores! Rangers win! Nice feed, score! Wester! Fox! Pass to Graves, there's number 50! Adam Graves! A deflection, and they score! It's number 50! They're on their feet at the Garden! There is joy for the men in blue. They have upset the Philadelphia Flyers. Saved by Rooney, rebound, score! Yes! The Rangers win! Put this in your Ripley's Believe It or Not finishes. What a save! Save by Lundqvist! Save, and they score! Messier! It's a power play goal! He looks, now he shoots. Score! It's a hat trick for Wayne Gretzky!